Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Thursday, May 16th, 2020. What are we in? 2024. Time for another show. Time to get rolling with the news. Time to resume the former fascist farting guy's trial in New York, and that's always good news. Time to catch up with, I don't know, whatever's being discussed lately on social media. Perhaps some insights or bombshells to distract us from the rest of the news of the day. I don't know. We'll see which direction we go in. I already see one way of wrapping up the entire show and possibly an entire week of shows following that we'll have to make some coverage of, but we'll threaten to overwhelm things if not. There's more election news that we still need to round up. I'll see whether that is on the menu for Greg or among his raft of stories. We got the main headlines of the biggest races on Wednesday, but there was some small bore stuff out there as well that's worth mentioning and celebrating. And let's see what other functions might be dominating discussion online at the moment. Let's see. All right. Yeah. All right. And then, right. True. Also yesterday, I think just about after the show, I think, perhaps during the last hour of the show, the announcement came out that there would be, or I guess that the two camps in our own presidential elections are contemplating the debate schedule that I guess they want. They've been approached. Do you want to set up a traditional debate schedule? And so now the big question, is it worth debating Donald Trump? Does it help or hurt to try to schedule one? Who wants to be the person who pulls out of the debates? And, I think it was pretty easily predictable and good politics at this early stage for Joe Biden to say, sure, that's what we expect from people. We usually have some debates. I don't mind taking on Donald Trump. He's kind of incompetent at this, and we tend to wipe the floor with him. On the other hand, there is, of course, the possibility of new and unpredictable weirdness being launched by, detached from reality, violent rhetoric just being platformed from Trump. So that's always an issue. We don't know how to factor that into the discussion of whether or not debates are a smart idea. We've never quite had to deal with that. So let's see. On the election front, because Greg's got other news, he tells me, I will simply note that one thing that grabbed my eye as we got ready for air was the news that Bethany Mandel, who had been running for school board in a close-in Maryland suburb in Montgomery County, and who has been something of a minor online annoyance, but a major, guilty of major infractions, but a minor annoyance herself. But just generally a COVID-denying, homeschooling, trans rights, transgressing. How do you like that? She's trans. Just all the worst things that go into being what we briefly in a period of history called a Karen here, until the Karens rose up in opposition to all of it and decided to try and make it official by running for school board and imposing her idea as a homeschooler on everyone else in Montgomery County about what she thought public schools ought to be doing. And of course, I assume that she was spending her time trying to make sure that the furries didn't get their litter boxes in elementary schools around the country, but beginning with Montgomery County, Maryland. Anyway, Montgomery County, Maryland is normie central, and they were having none of it. And she got trounced, although the next highest vote getter didn't leave her in the dust. It was pretty, I don't think it was very close. And I don't know whether this was a three-way race. I'm not certain what the dynamics were. There are three candidates listed here in this screen grab that I've got. and I don't know whether there was one seat being contested by 3 candidates or if it's a top 2 vote getters get in. But at any rate, they weren't having much of it. 40,000 plus votes for the leading candidate, Stewart. 21,000, almost 22,000, for Bethany Mandel. So, I mean, dangerously close to empowering that kind of idiocy in the United States of America today, but not in Montgomery County, Maryland for the time being. So that's good news. I thought that was worth celebrating. There were a couple of other results worth noting as well, including that in West Virginia. I'll tell Greg about it right now. Okay, we'll just start in. I'll say, good morning, Greg. I have news for you. How about that?
Yeah.
Another election tidbit reported yesterday by NBC News. We touched briefly on results from West Virginia, the nomination of Jim Justice, et cetera, all the things that we expected to see out of West Virginia. And we can be glad at least to see this, at least from the headline anyway. I haven't read in depth about just how, how bad is what we're getting to keep versus what was in the offing. But January 6th, felony rioter Derrick Evans loses Gop House primary in West Virginia. There was a January 6th convict on the ballot running for, and this isn't the first time it's happened, but happening in West Virginia, there was a pretty serious chance you could send a January 6th rioter
I
to
think
Congress.
they run the local Florida GOP chapters.
Yeah, I mean, it's not out of the question, but in West Virginia, in one of the states where you might guess it was perhaps most likely to happen, it came fairly close to happening, but no, was challenging an incumbent. That's a rare thing to be able to pull off. It does happen from time to time, but Representative Carol Miller, about whom I know nothing, except that she managed to fend this challenge off successfully.
And she's not a felon.
Right. She was, I guess, I don't know whether she was even on hand in January 6th. I don't know how old or how long she's been in service, I guess, is what I'm talking about here. But anyway, there are certainly plenty of people, and we can get to that too, because Mitt Romney is one of them, who have weird ideas about January 6th, what it meant then, what it means to them now, et cetera, et cetera. I have a feeling that might be on your map for you. But if the phone stopped ringing, we can start floating the raft those stories.
Well, it's interesting. I was looking at the Wikipedia entry for Bethany Mandel for some reminders. She's married to Seth Mandel, who is a online commentator. I won't say of note, but certainly of recognition. He's
obnoxious and annoying. Yes.
And Bethany is noted, among other things, for editing a children's book series, Heroes of Liberty. Biographies of right-wing cultural and political figures. But the interesting thing to me is that she was running for school board partly because she claimed to have been a member of the media. I mean, she writes online, so maybe that makes her a member of the media. I don't know. I remember when bloggers were having trouble getting credentials at conventions, but that's another story. Anyway, she was running for the Montgomery County School Board, but she was also suing the school board for denying her access to a school board meeting as a member of the media.
Yeah. Oh, so
and she promised that if she won, she would recuse herself from anything that had to do with the suit. And it's possible that offended people.
It could be, and it becomes a little bit like it's not that far removed from running for Congress as a January 6th rioter. Well, I'll come back the second time with a member's pin on.
Yeah, small bore. So you wouldn't let me do, Marjorie Taylor Greene was like that.
Yes.
You wouldn't. I made noise as an outside person and you weren't paying attention to me. So now I'm going to do it from inside. Yeah. You'll see. You'll be sorry.
I am sorry. Yeah. You're right. I'm sorry. We can't let you in. That's what I should have said. But instead, I said, I'm sorry. I believe in the
jerk. You're now a national jerk. Congratulations.
Yep. Well, there are also stories of international jerks getting a lot of attention this morning as well. But I'll hold off for the moment, and we'll see where the day takes us, or we'll see where you take us.
Well, I want to start with, of course, the fact that today's Thursday, so the trial's back on.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah,
right, we don't do it on Wednesdays. So I don't have anything to report from yesterday other than the very funny online and broadcast on the evening news challenge from Joe Biden to Donald Trump to debate.
Okay, yes,
and he said, I'd like to debate anywhere, anytime. And then he added, I hear you're free on Wednesdays. It was actually very funny.
That's a good one. Yeah, I wonder whether that's, I always forget her name, but there's a very sharp social media person working inside the White House who, you may remember her, came over from the New Jersey governor's account, behind the internet famous Your Mom tweet from the official New Jersey account.
Yep.
She has a name, good. Damn it, and I don't know.
I'm not saying Biden thought of it, but he delivered it well, and it was very good.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. There should be decent joke writers in any good White House.
Right. So in any case, the really interesting thing about the trial at this point is that Michael Cohen is the star witness, and as we went over yesterday, with no change to the narrative because there wasn't a court day, that Cohen did very well for the prosecution and very poorly for the defense. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you how many times I saw repeated the opening line that the defense attorney used yesterday in trying to cross-examine Michael Cohen, because he was making it all about himself.
Okay.
And basically attacked Cohen for making fun of him online.
Right. That was
sharply making fun of him.
Yes, true. I mean, yeah, it was pointed.
Right. It was very
sharp.
Pointed. So, and the judge called him over and said, what are you doing? It's not about you.
What's wrong with you?
So the rest of the day didn't go over well either. Now we're getting into the Stormy Daniels stuff this morning, so we'll see how that goes. But here's the interesting thing. Katie Fang was trying to summarize where we're at. She said, it's day 18 of Trump's New York election interference trial. Former Trump fixer and personal attorney Michael Cohen will be back on the witness stand for the continuation of his cross-examination by Todd Blanche, counsel for Trump. And here's some questions. If Cohen is the DA's last witness, and they said he would be, will the defense put on a case at all, including Trump taking the stand in his own defense?
Okay.
Because when you step back and look at it, who's the DA? Who is the defense attorney going to call? Who's the defense witness? There isn't any. The only possibilities are people that they don't want. They can get Alan Weisselberg. They were claiming that Alan Weisselberg wasn't, testifying. Why not? Well, you get him. Call him for the defense. Have him sit up there on the stand and say, I plead the fifth. That'll help your case.
Yeah, sure.
Or who else? Keith Schiller. Keith Schiller was the bodyguard who was standing outside the room when Stormy Daniels came for that now famous dinner in the hotel.
Non-dinner dinner.
Well, was it? Because Keith Schiller can testify to the fact that she was there, but he can't testify as to what took place in the room because he wasn't there.
I guess.
Okay, I've run out of people for the defense to call.
Yeah. He could testify whether room service showed up. There was no DoorDash back then.
Yeah, or whether or not when it came out, whether it was eaten or touched. But, he's not going to remember. And if he does, do you believe him or whatever? But, if that's your best witness, good luck to the defense. So will they call anybody? If they do, who? When will the closing arguments take place? Because if we're talking about
never close,
them not having much of a defense to mount, what happens next? And if the jury's deliberating, do they deliberate on Wednesdays?
Oh, I think that they can. Yes,
they can, but will they?
Yeah.
I mean, what's the judge going to do?
I don't know. I guess they
judge.
Can't deliver the verdict on a Wednesday, but I also I saw another version of the tale of why Wednesdays are off, but that I guess both could still be true. But he handles other motions and other trials on Wednesdays.
Doesn't make any difference. What matters is that Wednesdays are off.
Yeah, it just might speak to whether or not a verdict came down and it's a Wednesday. All right, I'll hear. I'm in the courtroom. He's not out of the building all the time. Sometimes he does do those community service projects, allegedly, though. So.
Right.
Well, you never know. They can always call.
They can manage that, I think.
Yeah. Hello, Judge. I'm using one of these new telephones to tell you an important development has occurred. Okay.
Right.
I'll be right there.
So we have all of that, and what I'm saying is that that's going to be.
What are you saying? What am I saying?
What we're looking at is that the end of the trial is coming really soon.
Yeah, I mean they're going to have to come up with a way to stretch it out.
This is quick.
Yeah, right. So the defense has no witnesses to call, but maybe they should start on. Your Honor, we call everyone in America alphabetically. We just need to make sure that this trial goes on forever, and of course. My client doesn't care how much it costs because he's not paying any of us. So let's all go. It's the only expense here is the per diem for the jurors.
Now, there is one other person they could call.
Ghostbusters.
The other person that was in the room with Stormy Daniels.
What?
Because if they want to talk about, again, part of the problem for the defense, going back to the beginning, is they said he never had sex with that woman.
They did say
They said these were legitimate business expenses for legal work.
Yes.
What I'm saying is their client lied to them, so they lied to the jury, and the jury knows it. So the only way to refute those lies is to get Trump on the stand. Of course, he can't. He won't. They won't let him. He'll lie more.
Do more.
Take
these lies.
But I'm saying, who else they got? So, that's the only drama left there.
Melania. I don't know.
Well, she wasn't involved.
It doesn't matter.
I wasn't involved. I want to have nothing to do with this.
Yeah. I don't know who they can call,
Right.
but it's,
I would
again,
like
we're
to quash that
evaluating it as
based
normal.
on the legal precedent of I don't really care.
Yeah.
Do you?
That's possible. You could do. I don't know whether he wants to stretch it out. I mean, he hates being there, but the longer it goes on, the less, or the longer he has to wait for his guilty verdict. So I guess that's
if
good.
there is a guilty verdict, or if there is a verdict at all, and I presume there will be, then that will be before the debates.
I mean,
so if that's before the debates, how does Biden deal with that? Does he ignore it? Does he bring it up? Does he wait for Trump to bring it up?
I mean, does Trump show up? Is he in jail? I don't know.
Well, that's another story. He won't be in jail, but
come on,
does he show up? So that's the other thing.
Debate from jail.
One of the weird, bizarre things about this whole culture that we have, where Republicans always win and Democrats always lose, and that's baked in, and then when the Democrats win, it's like a shock and a surprise.
Yeah.
Okay, is the immediate reaction of the press to Biden challenging Trump to a debate, and Trump accepts, is their first reaction is, oh, Biden must be losing.
Yeah.
Why else would he do that? Well, he's certainly not 15 points ahead. If you're 15 points ahead, you don't have a debate. You do a Rose Garden strategy. Everybody knows he's not 15 points ahead. In fact, all the polls basically say he's tied, including the Fox poll that was just out, which shows big gains for Biden. But that's not the point. The point is the reaction from Washington and the press is Biden must be losing. And I'm looking at this and saying, hey, have we not been given plenty of information and data about Trump's mental status not being what it once was?
Yes.
Is it true?
I should think so.
It
looks like it to me.
Is the public hearing about it? No.
Oh.
Why? Because reporters don't really think that that's relevant at this particular point in time.
When might that become relevant?
Well, you put them on a debate stage, and you don't need reporters filtering it for you.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, unless there's a lot of people who think man-woman television
is a fantastic, brilliant move.
It's good.
If it's not true, expose it for not being true. We can move on to some other topic.
All right, yeah, there's no danger in if he has his act together for the debate, good, he's supposed to. I mean, I don't know if he can do it.
But remember, there's nobody.
Judge it correctly.
Biden said there's conditions.
Okay.
And Trump accepted the conditions.
Oh, well, what if he's lying about that?
And the conditions were no audience, and your mic gets cut off if you run over.
Okay. Is it
and
in
Trump
Temecula?
said, sure, I'll take it.
Yeah, okay.
And Biden said, okay, fine.
Sure. I mean, all right. So now his people are like, did you read it? Did you talk to us? Why did all the things that you love best are not in this? Why did you accept that?
Yeah. So, is Biden getting under Trump's skin with the I hear you're free Wednesday, so let's have the debate on Wednesday? So the first one will be on CNN, and it's going to be relatively soon, like July or something. And then the other one is later. It'll be on ABC. But given early voting in this country, the traditionalists were all up in arms. How can you blow up the traditional debate? Well, the whole debate thing was stupid anyway. I'd be fine if there never were debates. But in this particular case, because you want to showcase that Trump's a shell of what he once was, debates are a good idea. But we don't need this particular. Remember the League of Women Voters? They used to do debates. Yes. They're not the ones who do it now. We have some sort of commission, which folds whenever the Republicans ask anything. Right. So I don't care if that gets blown up. Norm Ornstein was all up in arms. I'm a believer in the commission. I hate that they are getting taken out of it. Well, take them out. They did a terrible job.
What happened to? Yeah, that is true. I always did kind of wonder about that. Like, how did that?
Let the women voters do it if you want, because they were great. That's why everybody hated them from the politics side, because they were fair.
Can't have that.
Nobody on the politics side wants fair. They want people who, favor their side. So, the traditionalists are all up in arms. And the other thing that the traditionalists are all up in arms, this is the earliest debate ever. Well, that's because people start voting in September. You can't have a debate in October when a lot of people have already voted and expect that it's going to change minds. It can't. They've already voted.
Yeah.
Of course it's going to be early.
It could change minds. There's no way of telling anybody. You could tell the pollster, I changed my mind, but the vote's too late.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
I'll just vote twice. What are you, a Republican?
Well, that does happen. Well, good. That's a good modern era adaptation that I've been wondering when they were going to get around to thinking about. Most people actually make their voting decisions much earlier than that.
Yeah, it would be even better if at the end of it, here you're available on Wednesdays. Oh, and then P.S. Why don't we get around to doing something about the filibuster?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Let's get rid of some of these other, arcane things from an earlier era that aren't relevant in the modern day.
Trump has expressed interest in that in the past. When he thought he would be president and Republicans controlled the Senate, then he wanted to get rid of it.
Right. So here's some interesting pieces on that. One is from David Rothkopf, writing in the Daily Beast. All signs point to a Trump debate meltdown. Biden's eager for the chance to stand toe-to-toe with his predecessor because it'll be incredibly hard to look worse in comparison. and that's one of the debates that I see coming up online now, which I think is actually really effective. And, people are saying, well, I don't see the point of voting. They're both the same. And, people will say, look, they're not the same. Side by side, here are their positions on 5 things you care about, and they're completely opposite.
Yeah.
Right? What you are saying is that you don't like his positions relative to yours, but you have to compare it to the other guy. And that's starting to happen now, and that's a good thing. And I think it's a good thing for Biden.
You could vote for yourself, but you won't win. That's the problem.
Right. So some commentators have focused, says David Rothkopf, on Biden's sharp early morning announcement he'd welcome a debate with Trump. It was just the Egg McBiden the president's fans wanted, served with a side order of feistiness between the Make My Day Pal opening and Let's Pick a Date, Donald. I hear you're free on Wednesdays. I just love that line. It's just so good.
It's a good one.
And it did it with a humorous edge and obligated Trump to respond. And if that's the way he refers to the trial during the debate, that's great.
Yeah. Sure, absolutely.
Now, here's what
we
Trump
should refer to him by
his
prisoner
response.
number.
I mean, this is Biden's point. So Trump replied in character. He offers an irony-deaf reference to Biden being crooked and to criticize the president's debating skills.
Yeah.
So the Republicans are setting the bar that Biden is drooling, needs a nurse, and is going to come in a wheelchair. And it's, not going to be difficult to,
Yeah. Well, he walked
to go over that bar.
I guess that's it. Yeah. That'll be pretty good. I always thought it would be interesting to have the debate at the top of a flight of stairs, but I guess that's not happening.
And then he adds, of course, there's commentators who offered instant speculation about his motives. He knows he's behind. He knows Asian competence issues aren't going away. Of course, he actually isn't behind. Further, the idea that age is an issue for two guys who are essentially the same age, and that's one that doesn't stand up to scrutiny. But never mind that. Nope. After talking to a number of Biden administration officials, it's clear Biden chose to do this because he thinks he can win the debate.
Well, yeah, all right.
I mean, it's just simple as that. Trump does badly on signature issues, and set aside the fact that Trump's a lousy debater and the fact that his policy positions are broadly unpopular, you know, the question is going to be what happens when the debate actually happens. By then, we might have heard from the Supreme Court on Trump's immunity claims. We may have a verdict in New York. You know, so there's a number of things that would be of interest that Biden gets the chance to bring to the public, because if his complaint and concern, which it has been, is that, you know, the New York Times and other media cannot report good news. They can't.
No.
You know, we had this discussion yesterday about, you know, how they report the economy. You know, lowest unemployment for X straight months since, you know, the dawn of civilization, that sort of thing. And the Times will report it as a good economic report, but why that's bad news for Biden. They just do. They can't help themselves.
Well, it has to be good news for McCain, and he's Republican, so of course.
Yeah. So here's a chance for Biden to tell the public directly some of these things.
Yeah.
If they want to hear it. I mean, if they want to tune in. And although, you know, people don't necessarily like these two guys as their first choice for, in a perfect world, who would be running, it's interesting enough so that they might actually tune in.
Well, you know, I don't actually care what the ratings are, but it would be nice if people would tune in.
Well, if you're trying to reach the public, ratings
in that
are
sense.
important.
Yes, it is. I mean, I guess it's a good proxy. I want people to know. If they don't get any ratings, but they somehow find out, that's fine. Yeah, that'll be interesting. He should also perhaps offer to have the debate in New York in case he's not allowed to leave the state at the time that the first one is being held, in case there's any restrictions on his travel. But I don't know. Not going to happen. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. So let's see, we've squeezed all the stories we've got out in the first half hour or so. Luckily, as it turns out, there's lots of news all around us. So anything else that might have occurred to you that you'd like to add, I can certainly supplement.
So it should be said that among the many things, it's not the thing that changes everything. Yeah. But among the many things that's going to influence Biden's reelection is how things are going with Israel-Gaza. Mm-hmm. And people in Israel are starting, and I mean by people, I mean like the defense minister as well as the folks out on the street protesting, are turning on Netanyahu's leadership. And that's in scare quotes, and I mean scare quotes.
Yeah, very scary.
Because it's pretty clear he wants war to keep himself in power, and the rest of Israel's sort of getting tired of that. And they see that he doesn't really have a plan for Rafah, and what's the point in going in if you're just going to go in again? So the defense minister said, basically, look, either you can't have Hamas running Gaza, and you can't have the Israeli military running Gaza.
Right.
So what's your plan?
Well, we hope.
Because if you don't have a
Yes.
plan, you're not leading. And if you're not leading, this is a disaster. He basically said that publicly.
Well, yeah, and it's about time. I mean, you can't drag it out forever with no plan at all. I talked about it a little bit in the second hour, or maybe too much in the second hour yesterday. But yeah, there's that, and there's the weird coalitional politics and nuance surrounding even Israeli politics has nuance, and yeah, that's part of the problem. You can't have Hamas resume its role. That was the whole point of the war, allegedly. And you can't have the Israeli military occupying Gaza forever, because what would be the alternative? How would you ever leave? And then additionally, it's always been Netanyahu's platform and is the platform of his compatriots in the governing coalition that comprises the government, temporarily at least, in Israel, that you can't have the West Bank Fatah-dominated Palestinian Authority running Gaza either, even though that would be probably a very good solution, comparatively speaking. But that was always Netanyahu's sort of, if not his electoral premise, then at least the motive that drove him for all those years to what would otherwise be inexplicably his tacit support for allowing Hamas to run Gaza.
He wanted to build them up so that they could be a counterweight to Fatah.
So that neither of them would be effective.
And, it turned out to be a disastrous decision, and he will be held accountable at some point. Yes. Meanwhile, the military is anchoring a floating pier to Gaza so they can get some humanitarian aid in. And all I'm saying is that, without going into the details of what's going to happen next, because I don't know, or what it all means, because I don't know either, I'm just saying that how that plays out is certainly going to have an effect on the presidential election. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. I think that's probably true.
Jennifer Rubin, who can't be accused of being no friend of Israel, she's been pretty pro-Israel in her columns over the years. Yes. Israel rolls into Rafah with no plan for success, its tactics under severe scrutiny, and the fate unknown of the hostages who, if they're still alive, which is a big question, are surviving under deplorable conditions. No wonder tens of thousands of Israelis take the streets each week in protest. War for war's sake might meet Netanyahu's personal objective to remain in power indefinitely, but it doesn't satisfy our or Israel's objectives. It might also not comply with international law, which requires that any civilian casualties not be disproportionate to the military objectives obtained. So basically, everybody sort of sees this is what's going on. The question is, what can you do about it? People who protest at colleges would like a resolution to this. Everybody would. It's not so easy. Russia may be a client state of China these days, but Israel is not really a client state of the U.S., at least in the same way. You can't direct them.
Policy-wise, no.
So, you can do things. And, of course, any move to try to put pressure is met with counter-pressure from other political organizations here in the United States. We saw that just with the withholding of offensive 2,500-pound bombs and the uproar that happened in D.C. So it's a balancing act, and that's what you want from a president. Do the right thing, but be aware of all the pressures going on. And that's often the approach Biden takes. And in the end, it's often the best of bad choices. But, of course, the problem is that Biden's biggest strength is a return to normalcy, and that's really hard to do when there's chaos all around. And to me, that's why the election is still tied. Now, with low information voters, lots of things change between now and then. And Jeff Skelly had this piece from February 2020 to 2020.
Oh,
okay.
All right.
Biden has lost more support among white voters than black voters, but his slide among black voters is responsible for about a quarter of his overall slide in national polls, he was saying in February. In other words, a commenter looked at this, Tom Bonnier, and said, you know what? People are always talking about Biden's slide with black voters in the polls. It just doesn't show up on election day. So I'm just saying, it's happened before. We've had this discussion before. And you can't believe the crosstabs and subgroups when they're tiny, and pollsters really don't know how to reach the people that they're really trying to reach. It's not that the overall poll numbers are wrong. Just don't, pay pay too much attention to the subgroups. It doesn't matter how many times people tell you, don't try to read too much into a 250-person sample of a crosstab. That's not how things work, but people do it anyway.
Oh, well, that's what they give you to read. So you kind of have to read into it if you're going to read it.
Well,
but you could skip reading it. You have to
write a column. That's what you write about.
Right.
But, Bonnier is saying,
just don't
chill.
write the column. Write it about something else. Go to an Applebee's salad bar.
Right. So, all interesting.
Yeah.
Does black support in a Democratic primary matter? It sure does. Does it matter in a general election? Yes, it does, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
So what can you read from the polls right now? Not much. Too early.
Okay. But maybe a debate will help settle things.
Yeah. Now, if there were such a thing, which there isn't, of the American Association of Older Black Women.
Oh.
And they said, we've lost faith with Biden. You got a problem.
Okay.
But there isn't such a thing.
Well, right. So, for one thing, they won't be issuing such a statement, so we're safe.
Well, that's one.
Right.
And number two, such an organization who could speak on behalf of doesn't exist.
Right.
So, we'll just have to wait and see on a lot of that stuff.
We could start it and probably fund it.
Yeah.
Well, if it was a Republican, we would be able to do that. Yeah, no, that's difficult. I mean, no one will believe that it's a coalition of older Republican black women.
Right.
Yeah. Still, grift, doesn't have to be true. I'm trying to get an exit strategy for us here.
I'm just sending you this for a laugh.
Yes.
I don't know if you really want to do this. On May 15th, Roger Parloff wrote, Todd Blanche's opening gambit in this cross of Michael Cohen will go down in the annals of oratory, eclipsing Clarence Darrow, Daniel Webster, nay, Cicero himself.
Huh?
And then gives the exact quote,
which
I like, but you don't always like us reading this stuff.
Oh.
But I don't know if I actually read the exact quote.
I don't know. You mean the thing?
Blanche's opening statement.
Okay, yeah, right, yeah.
Was, you went on TikTok and called me a crying little shit,
I
didn't
do remember that, yeah, and we didn't have enough. There wasn't enough censoring horn to control things.
Right, and George Conway looked at that and said, I don't know Blanche, and therefore expressed no view about him whether, in fact, he is a crying little shit. However,
we don't know this.
Starting a critical cross in an important case, which isn't it a fact you called me a crying little shit, does sound like something a crying little shit would do. And I don't make the rules.
This seems true. Yes. Well, we read an excellent critique of his. I don't love spending that much time on George Conway, but, he does occasionally see through the whole thing. I mean, he did
and
personally.
The funny part was like the regular serious lawyers, Randall Eliason and some of the other commenters were saying, that's an excellent point.
I mean,
it's like all your colleagues.
It really is.
And all of your peers are saying, you really are a crying little shit, aren't you?
Why didn't I learn this in law school? Well, okay. I mean, you did sort of. We just presumed that you would understand that you don't start off your examination that way. But for those of you who didn't catch it, the nuance, don't do that. Don't start that way. And even if he doesn't call you with this exact thing, you don't want to start off with, isn't it true? Well, first of all, you don't want to start with, isn't it true that you pretty much owned me online? Yeah, you got me. Where were you going with this one?
I don't know. Let me throw out this Larry Sabato analysis, which just came up, just posted it.
Ooh.
A new Ipsos, this is a New York Times Ipsos poll.
Okay.
As Biden-Trump tied at 48 with registered voters, Biden's actually leading with likely voters in that poll.
Right.
New Fox poll has it about the same, 49 Trump, 48 Biden. With a tied national race, how likely is it that Trump is leading in almost all the swing states with wide margins in some, as the New York Times CNN claimed? I don't think so, he's basically saying.
Yeah, all right. That is unlikely. Good point.
So, just saying there's no reason to get upset, depressed. I see some of my followers on Twitter, people I interact with, they don't follow me in the sense that they read me. Some of my readers are saying, I can't believe what a bad mistake this is for Biden to debate Trump. Trump is going to demolish him. I'm so depressed. And I'm thinking, you must be a typical Democrat. That's not going to happen.
Who are you? No. Okay. Calm down, I suppose. Right. But that is, like you said, a genetic
Anyway,
trait.
and just before I go off, I'll give you an update on what's going on at the trial through Tyler McBrien.
Okay.
That was I have to say it was pretty funny watching a New York moment, a couple of New York moments with the trial online before you even get in, because this is a very popular ticket. So some guy is online early, must have been sitting there all night, and he gets a ticket to get into the very small courtroom.
Oh.
And he immediately turns to the crowd and says, "Got a ticket here, $350."
Wow.
I was laughing at that, and I said, "That's a New York moment."
Yeah. Was it Trump?
And Armando saw that and said, "Hey, I got to make a living too."
Don't blame me. Yeah, that's pretty.
Don't blame the guy. It's just a New York moment. It's just what happens.
New York. I mean, it's surprising that Trump hasn't looked to raffle it off for campaign donations.
Right. And another person online today was smoking a doobie. And there was some speculation with the other people online as to whether that person would actually get into the courtroom.
He might be a defendant in another courtroom.
It might be for medical
Know.
purposes. You never know.
Yeah, right. It's legal now. Maybe, I don't know. That's interesting. It's a interesting set of characters. I mean, waiting in line to get a ticket in Washington D.C. We're familiar with the phenomenon of, and I assume that it's spread to New York at some level, but perhaps for different reasons, of professional line standers.
Sure. Oh, yeah. That goes on all the time.
Yeah, I imagine it in New York. It's
hire
for things like,
for
for shows or, I don't know, what something worthwhile. Whereas here in the nation's capital, you are standing on line in order to secure a seat for yourself at a subcommittee hearing on tariffs on chemical imports, which is astonishing, and why people prefer to live in New York versus D.C.
Right. Because, if you're doing it, it's for a Knicks or Rangers game or
something good, right? Yeah.
Tyler McBrien reports, though Trump spoke to hallway reporters around 20 minutes ago for about 3 minutes. He didn't answer any of the questions. Will you testify? You worried about a conviction?
You should ask the guy smoking.
But meanwhile, at the moment,
we're
still in sidebar. It's after 9:30. Trial hasn't started yet. Blanche is giving, that's Todd Blanche.
Right. He's a whiny
otherwise known as a crying little shit. Is giving some sort of impassioned pitch to the judge, gesticulating dramatically, bobbing his head for emphasis, and Mershon is looking on from above, arms still crossed. Later on, what happens is we get the transcript, so we know what that's about, but we don't know in real time.
Yeah. He was rapping.
Blanche seems to be upset about something.
I guess so, and maybe he's crying.
Yeah. Today's elected official who showed up in support of Trump is Representative Anna Paulina Luna, Florida lunatic.
Yeah, right. There's like no, that's a total Matrix glitch there. But yeah. All right. Well, she's one of the worst. And I guess this rotating cast, and that's the tickets he's giving away. He could be
inside
raffling
the court
those
are
off.
Bobert and Gates.
Really? I think you just stack them on top of the
They're
other.
Sitting next to Eric,
seat.
Quietly behind him.
All right. Eric, watch her hands, man. She gets handsy in these
She gets handsy. Be careful.
Yeah. Don't let her take advantage of you. You're okay.
Anyway, so that's it. I think it's it's about scheduling. It appears. Lisa Rubin writes, before the jury can be brought in, before we even see Michael Cohen, the parties have started the day with a lengthy sidebar after Judge Mershon asked whether anybody needed to discuss scheduling matters.
Yes. Oh, debate. You got to talk to me about I wonder if they're arguing about the schedule in terms. I mean, it can't be. It's January 20 or June 27th. Is it that they?
I think it's June 27th on CNN.
Yes. Mighty OCD, I think, sent us a note about the dates, and it's been buried since, June 27th and September 16th. Yeah, are the dates. Some scheduling. He's really getting emotional about arguing the scheduling, huh?
Yeah.
Todd.
George Conway says, Lauren Boebert walked in the courtroom. Please pray we don't have a power failure.
Okay.
She does things in the dark you don't want to be associated with.
Right. Is anybody going to call out Beetlejuice while she's there?
I don't know. 3 times?
Should. Yeah, right. If you do it correctly, he'll show up. The show will begin, and like I said, watch yourselves if you're seated next to her. Right. All right.
Anyway, that's it.
Doesn't take up a lot of room.
Yeah. So enjoy. Have a good show. Hope you have news. And I'll see you on Monday, and we should have a lot more news about what's going on with this trial and other things.
Right, and it will be beginning again, and it'll be time for the defense to actually tell us, what are you going to say? Who are you going to call besides Ghostbusters? It'll be very interesting to see what they put on. Although, one of the things that they could do, there is a legal maneuver by which you could cross your arms and say, screw you, you didn't prove a damn thing. Let's just take it to the jury.
Georgia State lawyer Professor Anthony Michael Kreese thinks that maybe Gates and Boebert are in the front row there for moral support and character witness.
Well, you could have hoped for better.
That's the level of what you got.
It's really best that they be in the front row where their laps are visible when you nothing weird going on.
Anyway, take care, and I'll talk to you on Monday.
All right, very good. We'll see you then. And all right, we power on through the rest of what we've collected for you here, including, let's see. I mentioned at some point earlier in the show that there was I think I mentioned it on the air. I might have just mentioned it during one of the breaks. There's some odd commentary from, we're supposed to care about Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney making some rather bizarre comments yesterday, up to and including the headline bit here, as NBC reports it, that Romney says that Biden should have pardoned Trump, which is not an unusual thing for a Republican senator to say, generally speaking, except that Mitt Romney was one of the people that we thought, well, maybe at some level he does get some of this. He voted to convict Trump at his impeachment trial. Of course, he had that moment on January 6th where he was nearly ran straight into the crowd and they nearly got a hold of him, but he was turned around at the last minute by Capitol Hill police and sent to safety. And you just wonder, what does it take to keep people, it's been a couple of years, but has the memory faded that quickly that, they almost caught you and God only knows what they were going to do with you. Between that and that, the picture that keeps resurfacing of him having dinner with Donald Trump, essentially bending the knee and signaling to the world that he was no longer in charge of or even in close proximity to the leadership of the Republican Party, and that it was now Trump's operation. It was just embarrassing all around. And then this doesn't help with anything. Let's see. Greg tells me that even at this moment, that sidebar continues. So they just have not gotten underway in the open part of the trial there in New York yet. All right, so we can bide our time with this, reading through this here. Gop Senator Mitt Romney says Biden should have pardoned Trump. Romney, an outspoken Trump critic, told MSNBC's Stephanie Ruhle that Biden, quote, made an enormous error, unquote, by not pardoning Trump in federal cases or pressuring New York prosecutors to drop the hush money charges, which of course would have been interference of the worst kind, and which most Republicans, probably including Romney, would have at some level attacked Biden for doing, despite the fact that it would have been, to Trump's benefit. Anyway, Summer Concepcion is the author of the piece. Mitt Romney of Utah, obviously, argued, except for the fact that he had been governor of Massachusetts at some point, argued that President Joe Biden should have pardoned Donald Trump after the Justice Department brought indictments against the former president and he should have pressured New York prosecutors, over whom he does not have any direct authority, not to pursue Trump's ongoing hush money trial, i.e. election interference, which is going on right now, and which looks for all the world like they have an open and shut case against him, although they can't seem to shut the damn case. But we'll see. And that'll look kind of odd and out of place if he is rapidly convicted on substantive charges, but Mitt Romney thinks, they should have just pressured them out of bringing the case. In an exclusive interview with MSNBC, and who else would interview him, the 11th Hour with Stephanie Ruhle, Romney expressed his dismay in response to Republican lawmakers, including the presumptive Republican presidential nominee's vice presidential prospects, rallying to Trump's defense outside a Manhattan courthouse where Trump's hush money trial is taking place. This is him criticizing both sides, essentially saying, well, but for a pardon, except in this case in which he'd have to pressure the New York district attorney, the Manhattan district attorney, not to bring the case, which would be extremely awkward. But in other words, if all of these cases were either pardoned or dropped, then there would have been no opportunity for the Republican lickspittles to attend the trial and attack the rule of law in this country. That's the thin reed to which he's clinging here. You see, I'm actually so upset about their attacking the judicial system that it would have been better for Biden to undermine the judicial system by pardoning the defendant so that the defendant wouldn't have the opportunity to undermine the judicial system by making a mockery of his trials. That really, it just doesn't hold together logically, but that's what Mr. Reasonable Mitt Romney has to say about the situation. All right, so let's see. How does that make you feel about Republicans? The protesting that's going on, or the lining up to be in the courtroom to offer support to the defendant Trump. How does that make you feel about Republicans? Romney said, I think it's a terrible fault for our country, for our country to see people attacking our legal system. That's an enormous mistake. And I also think it's demeaning for people to quite apparently try and run for vice president by donning a red tie and standing outside the courthouse. It's just, I'd have felt awkward. Okay, so pardon the biggest criminal in the history of the country because it's making Mitt Romney feel awkward because he's not doing the thing that other people are doing that he feels awkward on their behalf. That's not really a great case for this, but he is correct, by the way. I did see this circulating the other day that apparently there's a memo that goes out that requires a certain, it must be the case because why else would this happen, requires a certain uniform for people trying out for vice president by showing up and offering support for Trump, as they took a shot of 4 of the men who had showed up that day, and all wearing the same, was it sort of a bluish grayish suit? I didn't even take note of the color, but the red tie. And it was really remarkable to see them all standing there dressed essentially identically as though they were members of a team, which of course they were. There were also reports yesterday that Trump's, we made mention of the fact that Trump was using proxies to get around the gag order, that he was having other people, the reason that they're showing up to offer, support in the courtroom. And why is it a rotating cast? Well, in one sense, it's supposed to show the numbers of people he can command to come for his support. And 2, they all need to take their turns. They're all supposedly busy people. So you're only going to miss a day at work, but everybody has to come and kiss the ring and sit in the courtroom and support me. And then afterwards go out and speak to the media. But because Trump is who he is, allegedly, the report is that it may come down to the level of his scripting the remarks. I would say, if I were not under a gag order that would send me to jail, possibly, for saying this, I would be saying the following. And so I want you, instead, to go and say these things and see if you can get away with it and see if the judge will dither and refuse to hold it against me, even though the court order that I'm operating under says very clearly that I am not to say it, I am not to encourage or cause others to say it in my stead. But, he'll just say, I'm not. I'm asking them to come and be moral support. And then they're saying these things on their own. All right, well, why do we keep seeing you, for instance, reporters in the courtroom? Why do they keep saying, as they can see what you're reading, they can see over your shoulder, and you are reading bullet points that are very obviously meant to be talking points and that then show up verbatim in the quotes given to the press by the people who are all dressed identically and have shown up to offer you this moral support. Well, it's pretty damning, but will the judge want to put any time into trying to interpret it, since he knows that it only gets him to that place he's supposedly so reluctant to go, jailing Donald Trump for violation of his orders? We'll see. Anyway, in the meantime, we have this idiot, Mitt Romney, trying to play it both ways. The Utah Republican argued that Biden should have pardoned Trump when the Justice Department announced charges against him, and that the president made an enormous error by not pressuring New York prosecutors to drop their case against Trump. Presidents, of course, it says here, can pardon only in federal cases, and that's been historically true. But I do want to prepare you for the possibility that one day Trump, if he manages to seize power again, will need to pardon himself in this case, which is a state case, which ordinarily, historically, have been beyond the reach of the presidential pardon. But, of course, you should probably expect that Trump ultimately may issue himself what claims to be a pardon in the New York case anyway, and then say, prove to me that that's not valid. I dare you. Go ahead, take it all the way to the Supreme Court if you have to. We'll see what happens. And of course, it's absurd, but if you're telling me that you don't believe that there's any way that it would make any sense at all to depend on getting a completely upside down, ahistorical, anti-constitutional, no basis in law, fact, history, or any prior understanding of the function decision out of the Supreme Court that just stands it all on its head. I don't know what to tell you. There's no 14th Amendment clause excluding insurrectionists from the ballot anymore, I guess. Maybe, sort of, kind of. And there's no emoluments clauses anymore. And, any number of things have just gone that way. So if you're telling me that it just can't happen because it's here in black and white in the Constitution, well, it isn't. It says that he can pardon federal crimes. It doesn't say that he can't pardon state crimes. It's just understood that that's to be the case. But what if they, even if it had said that explicitly, what if the Supreme Court just says, historically something, I don't really know. I don't have anything here because historically it's not been the case at all and there's no history to support it. But what if we said later on there will be history about that? So we're the originalists in this case. We're the origin. And other originalists 200 years from now will cite our doctrine, I don't know, essentially setting him free right now. So there you go. History. Boom. Done. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Well, it leads me to a bunch of other thoughts, of course, but we'll finish up with Mitt Romney here. And maybe a little bit of additional information about Romney just to press the case a little further. But we left off in the article by noting that Romney was upset because he would have felt it would have felt awkward had he, I guess, been required to show up in uniform and support the president. But he feels bad for other people who are actually doing that right now. And then, of course, oh, yes, right. The pardons, and Biden should have pardoned him because then there would be no trial. And if there was no trial, everything would be fine. Why do we have to have trials in this country? It's so uncomfortable, essentially. Well, let's see. Pressed by Rule whether that is Biden's job to pardon Trump, Romney said he believes that Biden should have taken a cue from former President Lyndon Johnson, saying that the president could have stepped in and urged New York prosecutors to drop the case. I've been around for a while. If LBJ had been president and he didn't want something like this to happen, he'd have been all over that prosecutor saying, you better not bring that forward or I'm going to drive you out of office, he said. It's just not a power that's allocated formally to the president. I mean, certainly there's soft power you could be exercising, but it would be ordinarily, it would be considered enormously corrupt. Certainly, if a president stepped in and said you ought to be prosecuting somebody when you're not doing it, that would be beyond the pale, which is a thing that we don't allow ourselves to say anymore for various reasons, but said anyway. But it would be beyond whatever non-offensive pale there is left for us to go beyond. This is, of course, the exact opposite. So offering somebody clemency, mercy, might not come down the same way. We might not see it the same way. But honestly, the independent prosecutorial decision-making of anybody anywhere is supposed to be beyond presidential pressure. There's a pardon power you can exercise, and beyond that, you're just not supposed to have hands on the justice system that way. But Trump has kind of beaten that out of Republicans. So I guess you get this weird response instead. Rule then noted that Romney supports having separate but equal branches of government. Thanks for trying to remind him of the basic foundational concept of the United States of America. I do understand that, I guess. You may disagree with this, but had I been President Biden when the Justice Department brought on the indictments, and this is the same thing said a different way, I'd have pardoned Trump. Why? Well, because it makes me, President Biden, the big guy, and the person I pardoned, the little guy. That usually doesn't bother Trump all that much. I mean, he'll just come out and say, actually, the reason I got pardoned is I'm the big guy, and the little guy gave me the pardon because he knows America wants it. Anyway, House Speaker Mike Johnson and several of Trump's potential vice presidential picks issued public remarks in front of the Manhattan courthouse where Trump is required to attend court proceedings in the hush money trial against him, expressing their support and loyalty for him. As the trial limits his time on the campaign trail, the potential VP picks, which included Senator J.D. Vance and former presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy, have echoed, without evidence, of course, Trump's accusations of the trial being a Democratic-led effort to interfere with his campaign. But, if you can't do the time, you know what they say. Biden and Trump on Wednesday agreed, of course, to participate in general election debates in June and September, at least the first of which will not have a live audience. Asked whether debates matter today and if he thinks it would influence votes, Romney, remember him, supposedly about him, who unsuccessfully ran for president against Barack Obama in 2012, said people have low expectations for Biden, but much higher expectations about Trump. Okay, excellent. The image that comes to mind is those two old guys on the Muppets. That's funny. How old is Mitt Romney? That sat in the back. They didn't. That's what comes to mind. But I actually think there'll be a huge audience for these debates, he said. I think people have very low expectations as to what President Biden will do. I think they have much higher expectations about President Trump and his competitiveness. Romney added that he has had good exchanges with Biden and that Trump seems energetic and forceful during his rallies. He doesn't, but he's unsure about what to expect when they go head-to-head in debates. You have got a cheering crowd. You do not. And you have got teleprompters that you could read. So how will they do in person, Romney said, referring to presidential campaign rallies. I don't know the answer to that, but I think America will be watching. Okay, well, you don't know the answer to much of anything. And to the extent America's watching you be a hypocrite, well, at least it's a good show. In case you had forgotten, though, about Romney and where he once stood on all of this stuff that Trump still stands accused of. Remember, he's saying that there should directly be a presidential pardon for the federal cases against Trump. And that means, of course, pardoning him for January 6th insurrection and, of course, also for the stolen top secret documents case. But he probably also, presumably, would pardon him from any tax court cases against him, including the $100 million plus that he may, in fact, owe in taxes now that the IRS is getting around to figuring out exactly what that mess of lies and paperwork was all about. But just on the January 6th topic itself, I kind of went back and just to remind myself, like, this did happen, right? I grabbed an article from the Kansas City Star, where their editorial board put together a piece in September of 2023 under the headline, Mitt Romney yelled at Josh Hawley being their interest here, on January 6th because of what he's taken from the Gop, the GOP. By the way, here a picture from when? I guess January 7th, once order had more or less been restored inside the chamber, and Josh Hawley is up and speaking, and Mitt Romney is visible behind him. Mitt Romney is, Josh Hawley, of course, speaking without a mask, which, was a political statement in January 7th, 2020. Mitt Romney, in fact, visibly double masked at the time. But there you have it. Anyway, more importantly, the things that they said. As they point out in the Kansas City Star. In the early afternoon of January 6th, 2021, level-headed Mitt Romney finally lost his cool as insurrectionists advanced on the U.S. Capitol, and in the U.S. Capitol, in fact, and law enforcement officers and Secret Service agents scurried to evacuate Vice President Mike Pence to safety, and then later Romney himself to safety. The Utah senator started to yell at Josh Hawley. Looking back, Romney isn't sure whether he screamed, "You're the reason this is happening," or maybe just, "You did this." But the last Republican presidential nominee before Donald Trump's hostile takeover of the party realized a moment of crystal clarity amid the chaos. The brash, as they put it, brash young Missouri senator and his far-right gang who planned to disrupt the peaceful transfer of power to Joe Biden were the cause of the unprecedented violence engulfing them. "This is what you've gotten, guys," Romney bellowed. Not his most effective line, but there you have it. That's according to an eye-popping passage from journalist McKay Coppins' upcoming book. It was then upcoming. Remember, this is from September of 2023. Romney, A Reckoning. Excerpted in Atlantic Magazine, and I guess that book looking to be a worthless lump of crap at this point, given the... remember, this is all being read to you in the context of Romney just commenting, "You know what? We should pardon him." Well, later that day, on January 6th, I guess, 2021, after the National Guard had finally put down the putsch, that's interesting for them to use, and cleared rioters from the Senate chamber, Romney thought his extremist colleagues would surely abandon the ludicrous theater they'd rehearsed of pretending to block the ceremonial certification of the Electoral College votes. All right, that whole thing fell apart, right? So, as dumb as it was, you were playing a part. The whole thing is blown up now. You'll get back to being serious now, won't you? But no. Yale law grad Hawley took the podium that evening and played to the C-SPAN cameras, spouting what he had to know was nonsense. Trump and his minions had offered zero evidence of coordinated wrongdoing in the election's count. Hawley, Kansas's Roger Marshall, and dozens of other elected Republicans tried to nullify millions of Americans' legally cast votes anyway. Or at least they made a show of it for an all-important audience of one, Trump, who demands unflinching, usually unreciprocated loyalty from those who serve him. This is real clarity at one point in history from the Kansas City Star, and centered on Romney's one moment of clarity, which he's now abandoned. As Hawley spoke, Romney looked on from behind, even though he wore a mask, too, in fact, over his mouth. The disdain in his eyes was palpable to TV viewers. From Coppins, there comes this. "They know better," Romney told me. "Josh Hawley is one of the smartest people in the Senate." Oh, boy. "If not the smartest. And Ted Cruz could give him a run for his money." Well, okay, it's Mitt Romney speaking. They were too smart, Romney believed, to actually think that Trump had won the 2020 election. Hawley and Cruz were making a calculation, Romney told me, that put politics above the interests of liberal democracy and the Constitution. Well, true. Hawley and his fellow travelers often rationalize parroting the various lies from Trump world because, gosh, that's what the voters back home believe. Yes, constituents believe up is down because the conservative media entertainment machine has grown increasingly detached from reality. It's not the viewers' fault that Fox News aired utterly false claims about Dominion voting systems machines supposedly deleting Trump votes. It's not regular Kansan's shortcoming that their soon-to-be junior senator, who's also an MD, bizarrely pushed hydroxychloroquine to ward off COVID-19, despite widespread warnings from medical authorities that it's useless at best and potentially harmful at worst. Romney correctly views not setting his voters straight when they've been misled as patronizing, not as showing them respect. Leadership demands speaking hard truths, even when those you represent believe otherwise. It struck Romney that for all their alleged populism, Coppins wrote, Hawley and his allies seemed to take a very dim view of their Republican constituents. And although January 6th seemed to bring several other prominent Gop figures their own moments of clarity, all I can say is count me out, said a dramatically exasperated Senator Lindsey Graham that evening, although he got back on the train as well. Enough is enough. It didn't take long for the conservative establishment to fall back in line. Oops, I've had a shift in the text here. To fall back in line. Within weeks, Fox hosts started downplaying the failed coup as an almost entirely peaceful protest, which is amazing given what they're doing to peaceful protests right now and insisting that it's in fact quite violent. And only days after declaring Trump bears responsibility for the attack on Congress by mob rioters, then House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy made a trip to Pervalago Sex Dungeon to grin in a photo op with the just ousted president. So rather than go along with the now common Gop denial of basic facts, Romney is retiring from politics. Remember that is true. It supposedly leaves him free to tell the hard truths. And he's using that opportunity now to say, maybe we should pardon him and pressure members of the judicial system elsewhere in the states to just give up and not prosecute him. Okay. Well, we can't help but also think of Missouri's Roy Blunt, who decided not to run for Senate again in 2022 after more than a quarter century in Washington. Blunt is one of the 22 Gop senators Watergate reporter Carl Bernstein named as having repeatedly expressed extreme contempt for Trump and his fitness to be POTUS. We don't know whether frustration at what his party has become was behind Blunt's decision to step away from public service, but the former history teacher's hopeful, patriotic speech at President Biden's inauguration, just 2 weeks after the Capitol attack, seems more pointed today than we realized at the time. This is not a moment of division, Blunt had said. It's a moment of unification. The new administration begins and brings with it a new beginning, and with that our great national debate goes forward. And a determined democracy will continue to be essential in pursuit of a more perfect union and a better future for all Americans. Very nice for all that it was worth. Back to the Romney part of this. Can we say we've come together as a nation 2.5 years later? That's the Kansas City Ed Board making that, or asking that question. Ex-Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt took Blunt's Senate seat, and he's proven himself a far-right culture warrior, seemingly most interested in fighting supposed woke diversity efforts in the military and decrying social media sites' feeble attempts to stamp out misinformation as censorship. Meanwhile, the fragile House Republican majority has launched a Biden impeachment inquiry, which Trump proudly trumpets as retribution at his behest for his own 2 richly deserved impeachments. Revisionist January 6th history keeps evolving, even as its perpetrators continue to go to jail. And Romney keeps taking heat from Republican voters for standing up for what's right. So I guess now he stopped. Speaking at a Utah convention in 2021, he became fixated on a red-faced woman in the front row who was furiously screaming at him while her child stood by her side. Coppins writes, he paused his speech and asked, "Aren't you embarrassed?" Possibly not. Trump's greatest political asset, one that's rubbed off on too many Republicans, is that he is utterly impervious to embarrassment. Who else could maintain sky-high popularity in his party after bragging about grabbing women by their genitals and by being found legally liable by a jury for sexual abuse, or after brazenly asserting, falsely, that he had every right to keep the classified documents he's currently being prosecuted for hoarding next to a toilet at his resort. What does he have to be ashamed about? That's a Hawley skill, too. While running for Missouri AG, he famously appeared in a commercial attacking politicians just climbing the ladder, using one office to get another. Less than a year after winning that election, of course, he had launched his bid for the U.S. Senate. Romney confided to Coppins that he sometimes doesn't recognize the voters he's represented for years. As he spoke to those Utah Republicans he'd previously known as upstanding citizens, now they were acting like wild children, and at times he was afraid of them, although I don't know how familiar he was, given that he's actually a Massachusetts politician. But okay. There are deranged people among us, he told me. And in Utah, people carry guns, and it only takes one really disturbed person. Doesn't really finish that thought. Perhaps the most palpable detail in Coppins' account is the very real fear officials felt as they hid from rioters in the Capitol. Remember this? He wants to pardon this. Hawley is proud of that iconic Francis Chung photo of him raising a skinny fist in solidarity with the gathering crowds on the morning of the attack, but we've all seen the security camera footage of him sprinting away when they became invaders later that day. It was hard to dispute that the battle for the Gop's soul had been lost, Coppins writes. We're not so sure about that. Political movements don't stay viable forever, particularly when they're largely based on celebrity and fiction. And while Trump's mendacious bombast echoes in the words of Hawley, Schmidt, Marshall, and their fellow celeb wannabes, lies have a short shelf life. Turns out they actually live quite a while. And they certainly can't produce the results the liars keep insisting are just around the corner, so we bemoan the retirement of Mitt Romney. Well, I don't. Just as we wish Roy Blunt had held on through whatever phase his party goes through next. I didn't care for that either. But every time a Washington truth teller decides to fold rather than fight, which he's doing now, that's the point of my reading you this old article, the battle for democracy loses a general it sorely needs. I wonder what they think of his latest comments. May their future replacements find the courage to uphold Republican and American values with honesty and character. And you should really start thinking about giving up on that. Kansas City Star editorial board. That's embarrassing. You were the ones calling for a feeling of embarrassment, calling people out and shaming them. What do you think of your guy now? All right. Well, that was a long walk to get there, but it was worth doing, I think. All right. Update on a couple of other items, and maybe a hint of some broader story, which we would have to spend a lot more time discussing if we read all the way through it. But these items, I think, of interest. Yesterday, Greg mentioned that they finally did. Yesterday was the day that they finally did the last controlled demolition of the wreckage of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore, freeing from the wreckage the ship that actually struck the bridge and brought it down. So that's been, pending for a while. I didn't realize how long it was going to take for them to get around to this, but this ship had been stuck there the whole time. What I didn't know, but Greg did, and then I learned some more details of it, is being reported, ironically enough. It's nothing ironic about it. Just odd that I'm getting my information about this from the BBC, which doesn't stand for the Baltimore Broadcasting Company. But their Washington correspondent, Bernd Debusman, Jr., Bernd Debusman Jr., I hope I'm somewhere near the preferred pronunciation, writes on this momentous occasion and updates us on the crew of the ship. I did not realize this. The crew trapped on Baltimore ship 7 weeks after bridge collapse. Now, of course, the bridge collapsed because they smashed into it with their ship. But, of course, there were the power failures that probably were at fault in, they lose power and then were unable to steer the ship. Of course, the pending question, or the remaining question, is, well, did they know something about the condition of the ship such that they should never have allowed to take it out of port in the first place? Maybe. We'll see what the investigation shows. But I do feel bad for these guys, at least in this situation. Listen to what the BBC reveals about this. As a controlled explosion rocked the Dali, is that the name of the ship? D-A-L-I, on Monday, Nearly 24 sailors remained on board below deck in the massive ship's hull. So, one, I don't really want to be anywhere near any explosions, controlled or otherwise, being set off in and around this ship. But the ship's big enough that I guess you can find it wasn't a safety issue for them. Still, the simultaneous blasts sent pieces of Baltimore's once iconic Francis Scott Key Bridge into the dark waters of Maryland's Patapsco River. 7 weeks after its collapse left 6 people on the bridge dead and the Dali marooned. Authorities and the crew hope that the demolition will mark the beginning of the end of a long process that has left the 21 men on board trapped and cut off from the world, thousands of miles from their homes. I didn't know to think about this. I didn't know what they had done with these guys. But as Greg mentioned when I noted this story to him during one of the breaks, they do need people on board. They have to keep the ship running for whatever reason, I guess. I don't know. Do they have to keep the ship running? I mean, they can't just say, look, the ship's stuck there. It's not going anywhere. But I guess, I don't know. You want the ship man. You don't want to abandon the thing into the middle and if something goes wrong, the ship breaks free and smash into something else. You don't want that happening, I guess. But listen to this. So the authorities and crew hope the demolition will mark the beginning of the end of this thing. But for now, it remains unclear when they will be able to return home. The Dali, or I don't know where the emphasis goes, Dali, a 948-foot container ship, was at the start of a 27-day journey from Baltimore headed for Sri Lanka when it struck the Francis Scott Key Bridge, sending thousands of tons of steel and cement into the Patapsco. It left the ship stranded under a massive expanse of shredded metal. The preliminary NTSB report, National Transportation Safety Board, right, found that 2 electrical blackouts disabled equipment ahead of the incident and noted that the ship lost power twice in the 10 hours leading up to the crash. The crew, made up of 20 Indian nationals and a Sri Lankan national, has been unable to disembark because of visa restrictions. Wow, what a bureaucratic nightmare, right? Their visas, they don't have visas, or at least whatever visas they had have expired. And so legally they're not allowed back on land during this time. They had to spend all of this time on the ship. Well, they're used to spending a long amount of time on the ship, but, with an end date in sight. And it's a long sail back to Sri Lanka, but 27 days is less than 7 weeks, and you usually have certain creature comforts that you can pass the time with when you're not working. But what about now? So here they are. They are unable to disembark because of visa restrictions, a lack of required shore passes, and parallel ongoing investigations by the NTSB and the FBI. On Monday, the crew remained on board even as authorities used small explosive charges to deliberately cut an expanse of the bridge lying on the ship's bow. Ahead of the controlled demolition, U.S. Coast Guard Admiral Shannon Gilraith said that the crew would remain below deck with a fire crew at the ready. They're part of the ship. They are necessary to keep the ship staffed and operational, Admiral Gilraith said. They're the best responders on board the ship themselves. Okay, that makes some sense to me. While the ship is likely to be refloated this week, it remains unclear whether it will be able to make the 2 nautical mile journey back to port. They can't just send it off on its way at this point. I guess you got to inspect this thing and see whether it can be restored to seaworthiness. Among those who have been in touch with the crew is Joshua Messick, executive director of the Baltimore International Seafarers Center, a nonprofit organization that works to protect the rights of mariners. The Seafarers here in the United States is the name of the Seafarers Union. They also have, of course, this International Seafarers Center to look after the largely international crew who won't be members of this union but are seafarers themselves nonetheless. According to Mr. Messick, the crew has been left largely without communication with the outside world for a couple of weeks after their mobile phones were confiscated by the FBI as part of their investigation. Hey, that sucks. They can't do any online banking. They can't pay their bills back at home. They don't have any of their data or anyone's contact information. So they're really isolated right now. 7 weeks on a ship in the middle of the river with no outside contact. They just can't reach out to the folks that they need to, or even look at pictures of their children before they go to sleep. It's a really sad situation. The plight of the sailors also attracted the attention of the two unions representing them, the ones that actually represent them at home, the Singapore Maritime Officers Union and the Singapore Organization of Seamen. Yes. In a joint statement on May 11th, the union said that morale has understandably dipped, I should think so, driven by, on top of all of this, unfounded fears of personal criminal liability for this accident and emotional distress. The statement also called for the swift return of the crew's phones, noting that losing communications with family members is causing significant hardship for crew members with young children at home. And I'm sure whether you have kids at home or not, it's causing significant hardship. An aspect of the story I had not considered. I wonder if we can't figure out a way to relieve that stress. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show. What's the name of this show again? And what time does it take place? The Kagro in the Morning Show. Okay, whatever. I'm thinking about these poor guys stuck on this boat, and as it turns out, there is some additional information. I mean, it hasn't been entirely as bad as all that, but it's not a good situation. So you wonder, well, can't they get these guys some other phones or something? And in fact, that they did. They were calling for a return of their normal phones, because of course that's where all the data is and all of their pictures and all of their contacts. But as it turns out, it hasn't been entirely as bleak as all that. They did say, where there's lots of additional interesting information here, but I mean, we're kind of getting a little bit weedy. But for the time being, they do note the crew has been given SIM cards, so that they can have operable phones and temporary mobile phones without data included. So they don't have their own pictures, they don't have all their contacts, and I don't know whether they mean, SIM cards like without data function, like you can't read articles or download stuff from the internet, or is it just their own data that's not included? I guess that's probably what they really mean here. But so they're not entirely out of contact, but that doesn't necessarily mean, apparently they still can't do the things that you and I would take for granted by having our cell phones with all the data on board that allow for online banking, bill paying, all the people we would want to contact or would need to contact, but whose numbers we don't remember because it was always in our cell phones, etc. But there's also been some community outreach, and that's nice. They've received care packages from various community groups and private individuals, which in recent weeks have included batches of Indian snacks. That's nice. And handmade quilts, which is also a nice touch. There's also been some effort at trying to find a way to relieve the stress of having been on board all this time and actually maybe give them some reprieve on land. I suppose there's all sorts of bureaucratic hoops to jump through. And then even if you manage to get them shore passes and bring them on leave off the boat and on shore, what do you do for them? It's somebody was saying, listen, I don't want to go through all this effort and get them off the boat and say, all right, well, we'll bring you to a Baltimore Orioles game or something, only to find out they don't care about baseball. They're just bored. I'm sure they'll be happy to be somewhere else. But they actually did say, yeah, maybe we can talk to the local cricket club and see if we can arrange a cricket match that might be of more interest to the crew members. It's nice that they're trying to come up with something, but I guess it's been a long time coming. And the real cure for it will be getting these guys back their own phones and then getting them returned back home. But lots of interesting information about the infrastructure around international trade and who can speak for or offer aid or relief to Indian and Sri Lankan nationals stuck in, on a Singapore flagged ship stuck in a Baltimore harbor. Who addresses these things? And there's lots of layers to this. It's really very interesting. So perhaps you want to peruse the BBC article yourself and take a look at that. I'll offer it up to you and we can switch gears and let's see. I want to double back on something else we hinted at yesterday. I read an old article about that I had mistakenly been, fed through social media and figured it was current, but it was about Rudy Giuliani and his unwillingness and inability to pay his lawyers. And his lawyers were suing him for non-payment of their fees. And I was wondering what happened, and we hit upon the interesting tidbit of Trump having hosted a Pervalago $100,000 a plate fundraiser to try to help him cover these expenses, and that somehow they're raising $100,000 a plate, but only $10,000 in total made it to the lawyers in terms of payment on a $1.6 million fee. And I was wondering then afterwards when we realized, okay, well, what's happening now? Where do we stand currently? A more recent report I have to share with you that will update us a little bit on the broader collection of Giuliani's financial woes, not just the $1.6 million he owes to this one particular lawyer. Giuliani bankruptcy judge rebuffs attempt to challenge $148 million judgment. Remember that what's really at the heart of his problems is he owes $1.6 million to his lawyers, but why does he owe $1.6 million to his lawyers? They were his best hope at defense against being sued for $148 million for defamation in the Georgia elections case. And guess what? The former mayor has missed deadlines to file financial disclosure reports, among other things. He is in bankruptcy court looking for bankruptcy protection against this $148 million judgment, and he wants to see if he can knock down that figure the way Trump just did with the bond, right? Why can't I just do that? And P.S., maybe I can get out of a couple of the other bills I owe, including the $1.6 million I owe to my lawyers. Well, it's always a possibility. Weirder things have happened in bankruptcy court, but you do have to meet the demands of the bankruptcy court. If they say, I need you to file this report, and the report is unfavorable, let's say, to your perspective, you don't just not file it in the hopes, and then hope, well, I didn't get any information, so why don't we just give you what you want? It's not going to work that way. Ordinarily, anyway. It's never going to work that way for Rudy Giuliani. Could somehow work that way for Trump, but not Rudy. The judge overseeing Giuliani's bankruptcy case said he was disturbed that so little progress has been made in sorting out his finances and refused on Tuesday to lift a legal barrier that has kept the former New York City mayor from appealing a $148 million defamation judgment. He wants to appeal, but the bankruptcy court is standing in the way. Giuliani declared bankruptcy in December after he was ordered to pay the staggering sum to two former elections workers for spreading false conspiracy theory about their role in the 2020 election. Since then, Giuliani has missed deadlines to file financial disclosure reports. He hasn't succeeded in selling residences in New York and Florida. Last week, he was suspended from, as Greg said, WABC Radio, where he had a daily show over what the station called his repeated violation of a ban on discussing discredited 2020 election claims. Of course, what's he going to do? I mean, why did you give him a show if it wasn't really for him to talk about that? Because he doesn't have anything else to talk about. Well, anyway, he's liable to the elections workers for the $148 million judgment. He's liable to his lawyer for the $1.6 million in legal fees. What does a person who declares bankruptcy do? Well, you're supposed to start selling off your assets under some controlled circumstances, certainly, and you have some protections in your primary home, etc. That's not the aim of the bankruptcy court to throw you out on the street, although some people deserve it, others do not, and so the rules are applied equally to all. But Rudy Giuliani, not nearly as fabulously wealthy as Donald Trump, was doing pretty well, pulling in lots of grift money and had several homes, one in New York, one in Florida, one, who knows how many actually in New York and Florida. But you're allowed to pick one as your chief domicile. That's New York. So sell the condo in Florida. That's supposedly worth a couple mil, right? So go do it. Well, what happens if you just don't? Well, you're in contempt of court. Well, what if I don't care? Or what if I think my friend will become president again and eventually pardon me? What if I just think it's going to take you so long to get to me that I can run out the clock? What if Trump never becomes president, but I die before you kick me out of my condo? That might be just what he's aiming for. Well, anyway, here's what the complaint is. They've done nothing. They've sold nothing. They've settled nothing. Said Rachel Strickland, an attorney representing the election workers. You owe us $148 million. Get on it. She accused Giuliani of getting fired from ABC on purpose by deliberately flouting his employer's restrictions so that, he couldn't have that income garnished in order to start paying off his debts. Well, I agree with you, says someone important in this, U.S. bankruptcy judge Sean Lane. I agree with you, and I'm disturbed about the status of this case. How disturbed? Let's find out. Attorneys for Giuliani said he has additional work lined up to bring in money. I assume that's the case, or at this point, why would you be working for him? You saw what he did to the other lawyer. Though they didn't say what kind of work that was. Giuliani's Manhattan apartment could soon be liquidated, they said. His attorneys said issues have been ironed out and necessary financial filings will also be made. Giuliani faces accusations from a slew of people who say he potentially owes them money. They finally have, I think, gotten things on track, said his lawyer, not Robert Costello, to whom he owes $1.6 million, but Heath Berger, or Berger, I'm not certain which. But he soon will be owed $1.6 million and not get it as well. The judge rejected a request from Giuliani, though, to lift an automatic stay so that he could pursue some post-judgment litigation in the defamation case. Creditors' lawyers argued that doing so would delay the bankruptcy proceeding. Lane, the bankruptcy judge, also addressed a request from lawyers for the election workers that Giuliani be barred from making additional defamatory statements against them. You would think they could get that kind of relief. While holding off on a decision, though, Lane said there was already a court decision on the matter and that he was not going to let this court be used as a place where parties can flout the requirements of law. Tell your client to stop, Lane told lawyers for Giuliani. It's not complicated. Lawyers will meet with the judge again on Thursday, that's today, to discuss the issue. So lots of action happening in Manhattan courtrooms this week and this day. There's where Giuliani stands, but he too I guess, stands to benefit from the fact that courts are slow moving and he can live until he dies in some fancy apartments. I believe I saw another article valuing the Florida condo he's holding onto at $3.5 million. A far cry from the 148 he owes to Shea Moss and, I've forgotten the other name, I think. Ruby, all right. Well, at any rate, the $148 million that he owes to them. Can I look that up real quick and get the names? Freeman, was that it? Yeah. All right. Ruby Freeman, Shea Moss. Got it as I was typing it. It fell out of my head as I was typing the names and got it. Okay, good. I wanted to get I'm sorry that I forget. There's just too many people to keep track of and all of these things. All right. Shifting gears. Dang. Something I want to put on the record here and discuss perhaps more extensively tomorrow, although I fear just by bringing it up I'm going to be stuck in it. But I want to put it on the record because it's fresh, hot off the presses. The New York Times has a very interesting piece that will bring no one else any peace, but is important in the grand scheme of things. New York Times Magazine, in fact, writing about the other looming horrific human rights violating issues as between Israelis and Palestinians in the West Bank, the other side of the country, on the other side of Israeli territory, and the other occupied area of the West Bank. The Unpunished is the name of this piece. The Unpunished, and I think it's going to be a series, How Extremists Took Over Israel. And it's very interesting and very nuanced stuff. I don't know how deeply they'll get into all of it in Article 1 here, or ever, for that matter, but this is extremely important. After 50 years of failure to stop violence and terrorism against Palestinians by Jewish ultranationalists, lawlessness has become the law. Certainly a situation we were aware of, kept an eye on. Of course, we're all distracted at the moment by Gaza, but this is constantly going on and has been for many years before the current Gaza war. It's disconnected in large part from what happened and has been happening in Gaza. They've followed different paths, but equally important and equally, I don't know what, deserving of international scorn in many ways, as some of what's going on in Gaza, if not every single thing. But a nuanced and complicated situation. But I saw this morning it being circulated on social media, and it's an extremely important piece and long and only part of a longer series. What made me stop and think about it was the essentials of it. And again, we should spend some time, and maybe we spend tomorrow reading through it. Although by then there might even be a second installment and we'll be even further behind. But what made me think about it was it's just describing the impossibility of the whole scene. That essentially what's going on here in the West Bank is we're talking about the so-called settlers there, Israeli citizens, I think all Israeli citizens, but certainly Israeli residents, if they haven't yet in every case achieved citizenship. I don't know what the citizenship process is like there, but essentially just basically saying, okay, well, we will forcibly take possession of Palestinian land because we can, because we have guns and we can force the residents off and do so illegally. But the political situation in Israel is such that neither the IDF that are supposedly overseeing the occupied territory here itself, or the Israeli police will ever respond favorably to Palestinian complaints that we are simply pushing them off the land, or in some cases just murdering them and then taking their houses and saying, this is an Israeli's house now. It's horrific situation. And it's happening not only, on the individual basis of one house at a time, but the opening of the article describes it happening to an entire village, that they just harass and threaten and beat and in some cases murder residents of this Palestinian town until they finally, there's no other alternative but just to pack up in the middle of the night and run away. At which point they either come in and occupy all the structures or bulldoze the structures and say, we're going to build apartment houses here and just say this is Israel now, not Palestine. And there's no relief from it from the Israeli political system either because, well, of the weird dynamics, including the fact that the government of Israel is now made up of people from this very cohort who just simply say, what if we declared it, if not entirely legal, just not going to be prosecuted? Let's say we pardon everybody, like, say, maybe Mitt Romney might do in this situation, or just not prosecute people such that it becomes a non-issue. And the rest of what would pass in this country, and this is what was so interesting about it, was that there's this parallel between what's going on in Israel and what's going on here. But what if normie Israelis basically said, the settlers, they're crazy. We know we don't want to mix with them. We don't want anything to do with them. We should be prosecuting them, but we're not. I understand the coalition politics that make it impossible for the government to press charges. I vehemently disagree and protest this, but I'm a normie Israeli living in Tel Aviv or, somewhere along the coast, the Mediterranean coast that just, I'm removed by enough space and miles that I just think, it's just a terrible thing going on among people, despicable actors to be sure in some cases. But on the other hand, most Israelis basically still harbor this resentment against Palestinians. There are certainly peace activists or people in the middle who say, well, I'd love to have them live on their own land, whatever that might be. And this is illegal and we ought to prosecute. It's enough with these settlers riling things up all the time. But what am I going to do about it? I have my job here in the Tel Aviv area and I just want to get by and not have trouble. I don't need to deal with these people. They're nuts anyway. And something. And it just sort of like, well, it's out of my hands. What am I supposed to do? They tell this story. It's very long and very involved, and it's important that we go through and parse it. But for our purposes, I kind of wanted to put it on the map because, I commented on it on Blue Sky this morning. Read the article and think as you do. What if, let's say, there was a so-called president of the United States, for instance, who would routinely, or claimed he would, routinely issue pardons for people like, say, organized ultra-rightist militia types, Proud Boys, if you don't think they're serious enough, then Patriot Front or Oath Keepers, or for that matter, even the total lunatics among the Groypers and Atomwaffen, and people who are openly Nazi in their orientation. But what if they were very fine people, for instance, who maybe deserved pardons, or Trump just thought he was sticking it in the eye of normie America by pardoning them? What if he were pardoning, as he says he will, January 6th rioters? What if he offers advance pardons? You'd think, well, that's kind of an unpopular platform. Maybe he won't win election in November of 2024. Well, he didn't win election in November of 2020 either, but that didn't seem to stop people from rioting on January 6th, 2021. Promises of pardons for January 6th, 2021 rioters probably only nets you what? Rioters who expect pardons when they riot on January 6th, 2025. Oh, he didn't win the presidency? Well, guess what? What about pardons for people who forged electoral college votes that say he did? Or, who just say, to hell with the whole Constitution and the voting system. Donald Trump is the president now, damn it. There are such people. Well, what if that was the case in the United States? And if you're worried about it, or you just don't think you can envision it, I guess, read this article. What if there was impunity for nationalistic, extremist, lunatic militias who simply said things like, and, switch the protagonists if you have to make more sense of it, instead of nationalist, ultra-rightist, armed militias harassing, beating, murdering Palestinians, they are instead harassing, beating, murdering immigrants, or pretty much anybody they feel like harassing, beating, and murdering, like the local school board, because, what about those litter boxes and the books with the gay characters in it or something, or the indoctrination in the whole curriculum. We got to drive these people from office. In fact, we should drive these people from these neighborhoods, even if they are Americans. Drive them into Mexico as well. What the hell? We'll just do it. And there are pardons in the offing for everybody. And then pretty soon you don't even need pardons anymore. You just say, to hell with it. We're just not going to charge anybody with these crimes. Mitt Romney said that Joe Biden should be doing this on Donald Trump's behalf, even where he doesn't have a direct pardon power. He should be pressuring the local prosecutors not to prosecute Donald Trump's crimes. Well, it's not a far cry from that to, well, hell, don't prosecute the people who are allegedly on our side here, as is the case with the so-called West Bank settlers in Israel. It's not that hard to imagine. And in fact, it makes me, it reminds me of I've been saying on social media for some time that libs of TikTok, hire Raychik, who drives all of this anger in many cases against the targets of the right-wing culture wars, is our Itmar Ben-Gvir, or if you prefer, having read this article, our, what's his name, Smotrich, the other extremist who is part of the wider Israeli government right now. Just elect the people who are committing the crimes, and they will declare the crimes not to be crimes, and, then you find yourself here. It's a little weird, to say the least. Also, by the way, I have to check up on this one. I'll do a little bit more reading about it. But when I first came to be aware of the right-wing settler wackadoodleism happening in the West Bank, it was, at the time, this is decades ago. It's been going on for a long time. But I was given the impression that a lot of the actual settlers, as they call themselves, although not necessarily the leadership of what became the movement that drove them, is Russian or Eastern European in origin, and that a lot of the settlement pressure was supposedly being generated by the fact that there were waves and waves of immigrants from the former Soviet Union and former Soviet states of Jews moving to Israel. The old story, seeking freedom to live as Jews when it had been denied to them in the old Soviet Union. Yes, there was truth to that. And then there was truth to, where are we going to put all these people? We need land where we can settle them. Not that that was a legitimate excuse for it, but that's what led to a lot of the participants in this illegality being Russian immigrants. And I guess it sort of occurred to me, I don't know whether they entered into it with this intention, probably not, but it is kind of interesting that since we're drawing parallels to U.S. political situation through Israel, it is odd to note that a lot of the people operating in this space and saying, well, we're just going to do it with force of arms, might will make right. And by the way, maybe we can depend on some corrupt politicians to let us off the hook here. It's odd that they turn out to be so, or if it turns out to still be the case in the early years, that they were overwhelmingly Russian. I don't know whether there's any connection to the way Russians attack the underpinnings of the American system, probably for very different reasons originally anyway, wanting to do that in the United States. But to the extent that Israel is the big ally and that the axis of power there is U.S. Israel, and Russia wants to be operating in its own base in Syria, I don't know. I don't know whether there's a real Russian connection here, but it's really of concern that we should be reading about this. I'm very interested in looking through this New York Times series and drawing those parallels. I also have the other thing I had in the offing for you today that we can save for tomorrow that's related is the story of all right, let's find out where our setting is here. Texas, where a Gop Texas school board member who campaigned against, on the culture war issue against schools indoctrinating kids. Well, the headline says she then read the curriculum, and the Texas Tribune's piece tells us that, guess what? She found zero evidence of any of the things that she had railed against in her campaign. And, well, okay, she's a Republican, so even odds that she would then say, well, to hell with it. The evidence is still there. It's just been buried by left-wing extremists and Antifa. And we'll round them all up, too, and arrest them. But instead, she came to the very logical conclusion. Her brain was still working. What if all of this has been, as Greg might say, and I think we can do this now.
Bullshit.
Yes, exactly right. And still play it over our outro music and not have it interrupted. What if I found out that it was, in fact, BS? What would I do about it? And what if I said, hey, wait a minute, this is all garbage. We shouldn't be doing this. We should be on the side of truth and right and, justice in the American way. And she now finds herself, of course, ostracized from the party on whose platform she ran. So I'd love to read that into the record. Maybe that'll be tomorrow. Maybe something dramatic will happen in the courtroom and we'll occupy all our time. Friday, anything could happen. But for now, it's Thursday and we know what's happening. Justice Putnam takes over the microphone for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And he's got his own lineup of stories, plus some overlap, no doubt. What's on tap? Well, let's see. Biden will not say anything about Trump's trials because he's a better lawyer than Richard Nixon. I like the lead in here. Unravel the mystery.
From
Next.
NetworksRadio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
All right, guess what? I have an offer for you. Suppose you just can't wait until tomorrow for me to read you the story about this Texas school board member who has disavowed the far-right platform she campaigned on when she won election. You wouldn't have to if you stayed tuned, as I admonish you to do, to the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy next, because he's got it for you. Stay tuned.